On December 30th, 2009, the CIA was awaiting one of its most important visitors ever. Driving into the CIA base in Coast Afghanistan was a man named Humam Khalil Al-Balawi, who supposedly had secrets into where the leaders of Al-Qaeda were hiding. The CIA believed that they had converted Al-Balawi into working for them as a spy, gathering intel on the inner workings of Al-Qaeda. Unfortunately for the CIA, though, this was far from the case.
This could come to you through unexpected way. Look, this is for you. It's not watch. It's detonator. To kill as much as I can, inshallah.
Al-Balawi was allowed to drive right through the gates of the CIA base and directly up to the building where the CIA believed that he would share his secrets. Nobody was allowed this level of entry other than Al-Balawi. As Al-Balawi stepped out of the car, greeted by top CIA agents, the absolute unexpected happened.
We turn now to the other major story this evening, Afghanistan, where a grim portrait is emerging tonight of the bomber who dressed up as an Afghan soldier, made his way onto a CIA outpost, and then blew himself up.
This bomber was actually a regular CIA informant.
The fact that he was able to get access to the individuals that he did suggests that this was not only his intent, but that there must have been some sort of a trusted relationship with that individual.
10 people died as a result of this explosion, marking this attack as the second deadliest day in CIA history, and one of the CIA's biggest ever mistakes. But who exactly was Humam Khalil Al-Balawi, and why did the CIA have so much trust in him? And most of all, how was a man that had deep connections to Al-Qaeda allowed to drive right through the gates of this CIA base without being searched? Well, today, we'll discuss how Al-Balawi outsmarted the United States like no other, and how the CIA made one of its biggest mistakes, costing the lives of some of its most senior officials. And thank you to War Thunder for sponsoring this video, but more on that later. Al-Balawi was born in 1977 in Kuwait to a middle-class family with 2 parents and 9 siblings. In 1990, Iraq invaded Kuwait, and Al-Balawi's family was forced to seek refuge and fled to Zarqa, Jordan. Al-Balawi was described by his teachers and friends as a very good student and was very interested in science. His strong academic performance earned him a scholarship opportunity to study medicine at a Turkish university, which was a very significant accomplishment for someone from a middle-class Jordanian family. While studying in Turkey, though, is when Al-Balawi began expressing some of his more radical religious and political views. Al-Balawi was identified by the National Intelligence Organization of Turkey as having connections to the Great Eastern Islamic Raiders Front, which was an Islamist militant organization in Turkey. He was also a known contributor to Al-Hizbah, which was an online forum for Islamic extremists. This was like an early version of Reddit, but for Islamic extremists. Al-Balawi was known to spend a lot of his time in these online chat rooms, which weren't very common back in the late 1990s. He did, however, end up meeting his wife in one of these chat rooms during his last year of medical school. In 2002, Al-Balawi graduated from medical school and returned to Amman, Jordan, where he got a job as a physician in a public hospital. Al-Balawi was known as a devoted father to his 2 daughters and a dedicated husband to his wife. But behind this family man and brilliant physician were some very concerning messages that he was posting online. Al-Balawi used a fake name, where he went by Abu Dujana al-Khurasani, to write pro-Al-Qaeda essays on this Islamist forum. His writings weren't just some crazy rants that nobody paid attention to. These writings were described as lengthy essays that were eloquent and strategic, catching the eyes of higher-ups in Al-Qaeda. These essays were posted on online forums like Al-Hizbah and Al-Firdaz, which were constantly being monitored by the United States CIA and even Jordanian intelligence agencies. Al-Balawi frequently praised bin Laden and many other top Al-Qaeda leaders by writing in Arabic, "May Allah preserve Sheikh Osama and Sheikh Ayman. Their words awaken the Ummah." This essentially means that these 2 leaders of Al-Qaeda can connect Muslims from all over the globe. Al-Balawi also had more concerning remarks like the Americans are the enemies of Islam and Muslims. Jihad is the only response. This was him describing that the Western occupation of Muslim lands, like the United States and Afghanistan for example, must be met with violence. Al-Balawi went even further by saying martyrdom is the highest form of devotion. The body is the vessel, but the soul is eternal. Even though Al-Balawi was still working as a physician, his posts were going from rhetoric and evolving towards possible physical action. By late 2008, Al-Balawi's online presence was no longer deniable, and he was detained by Jordan in January of 2009. Al-Balawi was arrested by Jordan's General Intelligence Agency, also known as GID, under the threat of terrorism. He was likely held at a secure GID facility in Amman, Jordan, where high-risk suspects are typically interrogated. You'd think Al-Balawi would be outraged by this arrest, but he was supposedly very cooperative with the Jordanian intelligence personnel. Al-Balawi presented himself as remorseful, claiming he strayed into radicalism through online influences and that he was ready to make amends. This led the GID into thinking that they could flip Al-Balawi into working as a spy for the Jordanian intelligence services and even the United States CIA. Al-Balawi was giving up names of people he met on the internet and described how these internet forums work in the jihadist community. What was most intriguing to the GID and CIA, though, was the fact that Al-Balawi said he could get within close communication to the leadership of Al-Qaeda, specifically to Ayman al-Zawahiri, which was the CIA's most wanted man right behind bin Laden. Al-Balawi even claimed that he was al-Zawahiri's personal doctor. The GID and CIA fully believed Al-Balawi, considering he was able to provide a detailed account of al-Zawahiri's medical history. This medical report that Al-Balawi provided directly matched the information that the CIA had collected of al-Zawahiri's medical history over many years. The CIA and GID believed that this could be one of their strongest leads ever, so they allowed Al-Balawi to return to his home in Jordan after being in custody for only 3 days. The CIA and GID continued meeting with Al-Balawi in person to see what new intelligence he could provide. During one of these meetings, Al-Balawi offered to do something that the CIA and GID found very intriguing. Al-Balawi offered to go into the tribal areas of Pakistan and offered to see if he could meet with Al-Qaeda's leaders in person to gain further intel. The CIA and GID both believed this could be game-changing, so they approved Al-Balawi's request. The CIA and GID gave Al-Balawi a visa and traveling money and sent him off into Pakistan to look for Al-Qaeda leadership. Spying on the most dangerous men in the world was going to require lots of planning, strategy, and nerves of steel. And when it comes to high-stakes operations and a realistic military strategy, that's where today's sponsor comes in, War Thunder. War Thunder is a free-to-play military game that lets you experience the battlefield from all angles, air, land, and sea. I really believe War Thunder looks more realistic than any other war game out there, and it's free to play on PC, consoles, and even mobile. War Thunder is so realistic that it will even show you an X-ray view where you'll see precisely where a shell penetrated the vehicle, which components were affected, and what ultimately led to the destruction of the vehicle. Speaking of vehicles, you can step into the cockpit or driver's seat of over 2,500 vehicles spanning from 10 different nations. From their 1920s era propeller planes and dreadnoughts to the modern day tanks and fighter jets, this game spans nearly a century of warfare. I personally recommend trying out War Thunder on your mobile device, considering there's not many war games that can look this realistic on a small screen. And not to mention, but it's free. You would be joining a global player base of over 70 million people where you can experience large multiplayer battles. New and returning players who haven't played in the last 6 months will also receive a massive bonus pack on PC and consoles that includes multiple premium vehicles, the exclusive vehicle decorator Eagle Valor, 100,000 Silver Lions, and 7 days of a premium account. All you have to do is try out War Thunder through the link in my description, and all those exclusive perks and bonus packs are yours. The offer is only available for a limited time though, so make sure to try it out soon. Al-Balawi was sent to North Waziristan, which is where much of the Al-Qaeda and Taliban leadership were based. His Jordanian and CIA handlers believed that he would use his background on these online jihadist forums, as well as his medical credentials, in order to infiltrate jihadist circles and locate Ayman al-Zawahiri. Or at least, that was the goal.
If Al-Qaeda was to lose Ayman al-Zawahiri in an airstrike, if we look at his current role in the organization, he's a pivotal player. If he were to be taken out of the picture, there's no doubt it would be a very strong blow against the organization.
Once Al-Balawi made it into Pakistan, the CIA and GID didn't hear from him for several months. When a spy like this goes dark for several months, it's normally a red flag. He could have given up on the mission, could have been killed, or simply could have just failed to gain access to the Al-Qaeda leadership. At the time though, the CIA and GID didn't have many leads on where bin Laden and al-Zawahiri were located, so their thinking was, what do we have to lose with this guy? As the months went by with no communication, the CIA and GID now believed that Al-Balawi was of no help. Until one day, the GID received a video from Al-Balawi. To the CIA and GID's great surprise, Al-Balawi had actually gained access to Al-Qaeda's top leaders and was sitting next to al-Zawahiri in the video. The fact that Al-Balawi was sitting next to a target as big as al-Zawahiri was apparently what grabbed everybody by the throat at the CIA. The CIA has never released this video, but it's said that Al-Balawi was showing himself next to al-Zawahiri in a tent deep into Pakistan's tribal areas. After this video was sent, Al-Balawi was in more regular communication with his main Jordanian handler, Captain Ali bin Zaid. Al-Balawi seemed like he was now cultivating a deep trust with Zaid, given he was now communicating back and forth with him pretty frequently. Al-Balawi would communicate with Zaid using a method known as dead drop emailing, a common method used by spies. This is where Al-Balawi and Zaid would share access to a single email account. Instead of sending emails back and forth, both Al-Balawi and Zaid would log onto the same email account and read drafts that were saved but never sent. Sending emails back and forth is normally easily hacked, but this method is much harder to detect by hackers. In theory, the GID and CIA could see the general location from where Al-Balawi was logging into this email address from, but Al-Balawi's location was never consistent. The GID and CIA didn't know if Al-Balawi was spoofing his IP address to make it look like he was somewhere that he actually wasn't, so these locations weren't of great significance. Zaid asked Al-Balawi to send him targets for where they should launch drone strikes. Al-Balawi didn't want to do something this extreme, but he did agree to send detailed reports of what happened after these drones struck, offering the CIA detailed insights from the ground.
Obviously, a lot of these strikes have been in the Fatah and going after Al-Qaeda suspects who are up in very tough terrain along the border between Afghanistan and Pakistan. For us to be able to get them in another way would involve probably a lot more intrusive military actions than the one that we're already engaging in.
The CIA knew when and where these drone strikes hit, but getting insider perspectives on the number of casualties, who was hit, and Al-Qaeda's reactions to the strikes was incredibly valuable. The feedback Al-Balawi was sending to his Jordanian handler allowed the CIA to confirm or deny success with these strikes, depending on who they were hoping to hit. These drone strikes were mainly in Pakistan's federally administered tribal land, where Pakistan allowed the tribes to self-police. Given Pakistan's military was basically absent from this area, Al-Qaeda and the TTP, which was Pakistan's network of the Taliban, moved into this area to establish their headquarters. Al-Qaeda was primarily located in northern Waziristan, and the TTP was in southern Waziristan. Even though the CIA knew this was where most of the Al-Qaeda leaders were operating from, it still would have been extremely dangerous for them to go in on ground and find these leaders' hiding spots. For one, Americans or anybody that was white would be instantly recognized and abducted. Also, Pakistan was extremely sensitive to foreign ground operations in their travel areas, especially from the CIA or US military. Going in on ground would have risked the United States' diplomatic relations with Pakistan and could have even led to Pakistan's military striking back against the United States. As a result, there was little incentive to put troops on the ground when drone strikes could do the job from 20,000 feet up. Although these airstrikes were relatively simple to conduct, the US wasn't having much success with taking out Al-Qaeda's top leaders in these strikes. Al-Balawi said that he could change that. The CIA wanted to meet with Al-Balawi in person so that they could confirm the reports that he was giving them. This was their biggest lead to finding top Al-Qaeda leaders, so they believed their next step should be discussing this face-to-face. Al-Balawi, as part of his strategic plan, initially played hard to get. Al-Balawi was showing reluctance to meet the CIA in Afghanistan and said that he preferred to meet them in Pakistan. This playing hard to get likely made him look more legit, rather than someone who would be super eager to fully cooperate with intel agencies. Eventually, though, a compromise was reached. Al-Balawi agreed to meet at the forward operating base in Coast Afghanistan, only under 2 conditions though. His first was that Jordanian handler, Captain Ali bin Zaid, would be present. The second was that he would not be searched by security. Al-Balawi asking to not be searched was definitely concerning for the CIA, but they had great confidence in the security of this CIA base that even without a personal search, other security measures would be sufficient enough to detect any threat. The CIA was desperate for intelligence and agreed to Al-Balawi's conditions. After all, the CIA believed that this was their closest ally to Al-Qaeda leadership.
And by the way, that's where bin Laden lives, and we will go at him if we have actionable intelligence.
The morning had finally come where Al-Balawi would travel to the CIA base in Afghanistan and meet with top-level agents. Al-Balawi traveled by car from the travel areas in Pakistan and was heading towards a remote spot on the border of Pakistan and Afghanistan. Al-Balawi was taking untraditional routes to get to the border, with the goal of avoiding Al-Qaeda and the Taliban's checkpoints along the main highways. This unconventional route of taking small back roads in order to bypass jihadist checkpoints was a strategic move by Al-Balawi, but not for the reason the CIA thought. This was all just to maintain the illusion that he was truly a deep cover spy for the CIA that was infiltrating Al-Qaeda territory. If he could travel openly and easily through the areas controlled by the very groups he claimed to be spying on, this would have raised immediate suspicion from his handlers. This also reinforced the idea that Al-Balawi was taking significant risks in order to provide intelligence for the CIA and GID, strengthening their trust in Al-Balawi even further. At this remote spot on the border, there waiting for him was a man named Sharif Argandawiwal. Sharif was an Afghan and served as the chief of external security at the forward operating base, which is more widely known as Camp Chapman. As the chief of external security, Sharif's job was to vet visitors and escort them to the base. It is not publicly known where exactly along the border that these two men met, but it is assumed that this meeting spot could have happened at the Ghulam Khan border crossing, which provides relatively discreet access from the tribal areas in Waziristan to the CIA operational territory in Afghanistan. Al-Balawi finally arrived at this remote meeting location wearing a travel dress and dark sunglasses. Sharif welcomed Al-Balawi into his car, and off they went towards Camp Chapman. Depending on where the exact meeting point was, this drive back to Camp Chapman would have taken about 1 to 2 hours, and not much is known about what was said between these two men in this car ride. As the two men were making their trek through the rugged and remote Afghanistan land, back at Camp Chapman, the CIA was awaiting one of their most highly anticipated visitors ever. Camp Chapman was the United States' most important counterterrorism hub. Inside this base, there was a building specifically designed for debriefing high-value informants like Al-Balawi. Typically, these secretive meetings only include 2 to 3 agents in order to maintain security and even to protect the identities of the CIA officers. Waiting for Al-Balawi to arrive, though, was approximately 16 people, many of whom flew in from the United States for this extremely important meeting. One of these who flew in was the man that Al-Balawi requested, his Jordanian handler, Captain Ali bin Zaid. The CIA even baked Al-Balawi a birthday cake as a gesture of goodwill. The CIA was trying to do anything to make Al-Balawi feel as welcomed as possible. The most significant tactic to make Al-Balawi feel welcomed was the CIA deciding to not enforce the typical 3 rings of security at Camp Chapman. In the outer ring of Camp Chapman, this includes multiple layers of barbed wire, large sand-filled barriers to prevent something like a tank from invading, and potentially even minefields that could detonate. There's also regular patrols and vehicles monitoring the nearby areas for any potential threats. Then the second layer includes heavily fortified gates with multiple layers of inspection. This is where CIA officers are vetting who exactly is entering. Then the third layer of security includes the heavily fortified walls on the buildings, bulletproof glass, and potentially even other security checkpoints in order to access the camp's most sensitive areas. As Al-Balawi and Sharif pulled up to Camp Chapman, they were allowed to bypass the outer 2 layers of security and drove directly up to the building where the CIA sits down with its high-value informants and spies. The fact that Sharif and Al-Balawi were waved through security checkpoints without stopping was far from normal. As Sharif's car pulled up to the concrete building with Al-Balawi inside, several individuals walked out to greet Al-Balawi. The most prominent of them were Jennifer Lynn Matthews, who was the CIA-based chief, Harold Brown Jr., a top CIA operations officer, Scott Michael Robertson, a top security officer, and of course Captain Ali bin Zaid, the Jordanian handler of Al-Balawi. As the car had stopped, Al-Balawi exited the passenger side of the car, away from the approaching guards. Exiting on the opposite side from the people there to greet him immediately raised some concern. As Al-Balawi began to walk around the side of the car, he started to chant Allahu Akbar, meaning God is great in Arabic. It was at this point that the two security officers, Dane Clark Parisi and Jeremy Jason Weiss, who were approaching Al-Balawi, could tell that something was gravely wrong. They reportedly ordered Al-Balawi to show his hands, but before they could fully react or conduct a search, Al-Balawi detonated the powerful explosives hidden in his vest. The explosion was massive, killing 10 people, including Al-Balawi, and injuring 6 others, marking this as the deadliest attack against the CIA in over 25 years, and the second deadliest day in the agency's history. Among those who perished were Jennifer Matthews, Scott Robertson, Darren Labonte, Elizabeth Hansen, Harold Brown Jr., Dane Parisi, Jeremy Weiss, Captain Ali bin Zaid, the Jordanian handler that was closest with Al-Balawi, and Sharif Argandawal, the Afghan external security chief who drove Al-Balawi to the base. The immediate aftermath was marked by chaos, screams, and the frantic efforts of those who survived to assist those who were wounded. The base was immediately shut down, and an intense investigation began to identify how the attack occurred and if anybody else was in on the attack. In the days that followed, Al-Qaeda and the Pakistani Taliban, or TTP, hailed the attack as a major victory. The TTP released a video of Al-Balawi sitting next to the TTP's leader, explaining what he was about to do. This video served as a significant propaganda victory for Al-Qaeda and the TTP, as this showed they could strike right at the heart of their enemies. The CIA and United States military certainly didn't back down from their mission though in taking out Al-Qaeda and eliminating their leader Bin Laden. Bin Laden was hiding in Abbottabad, Pakistan at this time, and it wouldn't be long before Navy SEAL Team 6 would raid this compound. I did a full video on every home that Bin Laden lived in throughout his life, many of which were in Waziristan, which we talked about in this video, and you can watch that video on Bin Laden's homes right here. And a big thanks to War Thunder for sponsoring this video. You can play for free right now on PC, PlayStation, Xbox, or mobile using the link in the pinned comment or description. If you're new, or if you haven't played in the last 6 months, you'll get a huge bonus pack on PC and consoles with premium vehicles and more. But it's only available for a limited time, so don't miss out.